Chosen one, what if I told you that right now, this very moment, your prayers are either being answered or permanently shelved? What if the sleepless nights you've been having aren't insomnia, but heaven trying to wake you up before it's too late? What if that restless feeling in your chest, that thing you can't name, isn't anxiety, but God's alarm clock going off in your spirit? Listen to me carefully. This ain't another sermon. This is an alarm clock sent from heaven. And if you hit snooze on what I'm about to tell you, you'll wake up 3 years from now in the exact same broken place you're sitting right now. God marked 3 days, not 4, not 6, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And if you ignore them, your timeline will collapse. Some of y'all think this is symbolic, poetic, nice Sunday school material. But what if I told you it's scheduled and the countdown already started ticking? What if those tears you've been crying in the dark, those whispered prayers at 3 a.m., those moments when you felt like giving up, what if they were all preparing you for these 3 days? See, there's a spiritual window opening right now. Ancient, sacred, the kind that only cracks open once in a generation. And you, yes, you're not watching this by accident. Your spirit led you here because God marked your name for this moment. The enemy has been working overtime to distract you, delay you, discourage you. But heaven said, not this time. If your spirit's already trembling, if something deep inside you is saying, this is for me, stop scrolling. Type your city in the comments. Mark your ground. Because angels are tracking who's listening. They're taking attendance for what's about to unfold. And before we go deeper, thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. Because what I'm about to reveal will either save your timeline or expose why nothing's been working. The choice is yours. But time just ran out. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 3 days that will determine the next 3 years of your life. Are you covered or exposed? Why do you think you've been waking up at 3:17 a.m. for the past 2 weeks? Why has your heart been racing every Wednesday morning like something's about to happen? Why does every prayer you've whispered lately feel like it's echoing back with no answer? Dear chosen one, I need you to understand something that most believers will never grasp. You've been programmed to expect God to shout, to thunder, to show up with earthquakes and burning bushes. But what if I told you that your biggest breakthrough is waiting in a whisper so quiet that most people miss it completely? Wednesday is the day heaven whispers. And if you're not quiet, you'll miss the map. See, there's a reason your spirit has been restless. There's a reason you can't shake this feeling that something's shifting in the spiritual realm. God has been trying to download instructions directly into your subconscious, but you've been too busy, too distracted, too convinced that his voice should sound like a megaphone instead of a gentle breeze. Let me take you back to 1 Kings 19. Elijah, this mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven, he's running for his life. Broken, defeated, hiding in a cave. And God tells him, go stand on the mountain, for the Lord is about to pass by. First came a great wind that tore the mountains apart. But the scripture says God was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake that shook the very foundations, but God was not in the earthquake. Then came fire that consumed everything in its path, but God was not in the fire. And then a gentle whisper, a still small voice, and that's where God was. You've been looking for the earthquake, haven't you? You've been waiting for the fire. But Wednesday mornings, when the world is still asleep, when your phone isn't buzzing, when your mind finally quiets down, that's when heaven downloads the blueprint for your breakthrough. Don't ignore the details. Names that pop into your head for no reason, dreams that feel more real than reality, flashes in your sleep that leave you with a knowing you can't explain. That's not imagination. That's instruction. Your grandmother knew this. She'd wake up before dawn on Wednesdays, sit in her kitchen with her coffee and her Bible, and she'd listen, really listen. Not for thunder, for whispers. And that's how she knew to pray for your uncle before his accident. That's how she knew to call your mother the day before she got that diagnosis. That's how she knew to hide money in that old shoebox that saved your family when your father lost his job. She understood something that this generation has forgotten. God's voice is not a trumpet when He's giving you the combination to the safe. It's a lockpick, subtle, precise. But if you ignore it, the vault won't open. You see, most people are waiting for God to speak in their Sunday morning language. But Wednesday whispers come in dream language. They come in gut feelings. They come in the name of someone you haven't thought about in years, suddenly appearing in your mind 3 times in one morning. They come in scripture verses that seem to jump off the page and grab you by the throat. But here's what breaks my heart. Most believers are so addicted to noise, so dependent on external validation, so busy performing their faith, that they miss the very instructions that could change their entire timeline. Last Wednesday morning, God whispered your promotion to you, but you were scrolling through social media. 3 Wednesdays ago, He downloaded the strategy for your healing, but you were arguing with your spouse about bills. 5 Wednesdays back, He tried to give you the name of the person who holds your breakthrough, but you were watching the news, filling your spirit with fear instead of faith. And now you're sitting here wondering why nothing's moving in your life, why prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling, why breakthrough feels like a fantasy instead of a promise. Here's the truth that's going to shake you. Wednesday is not the beginning, it's the blueprint. The door won't swing on Thursday if you miss the whisper. Think about Noah. God didn't just say build an ark on Sunday and expect him to start hammering on Monday. The instructions came in whispers, measurements, materials, details that seemed random until the storm clouds gathered. Think about Mary. The angel didn't announce Jesus' birth to a crowd at the temple. It was a private whisper to a young girl in the quiet of her own room. Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. Think about Samuel. As a boy, sleeping in the temple, he heard his name called 3 times before he realized it wasn't Eli, it was God. But it was a whisper, so gentle that he almost missed it entirely. Your Wednesday whispers aren't random thoughts. They're divine downloads. They're heaven's GPS recalculating your route to destiny. But if you keep treating them like background noise, if you keep explaining them away as coincidence, if you keep drowning them out with the chaos of this world, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering why other people seem to walk in miracles while you're stuck in mediocrity. There's something else you need to understand about Wednesday whispers. They're not just information, they're invitations. God isn't just telling you what's going to happen. He's inviting you to participate in the miracle. But participation requires preparation. And preparation requires that you actually hear the instructions. Remember Moses at the burning bush. God didn't just say, I'm sending you to Pharaoh. He gave detailed instructions. He told him exactly what to say, exactly what signs to perform, exactly how the whole thing would unfold. But Moses had to get quiet enough to receive the download. Your Wednesday morning isn't just another day of the week. It's your burning bush moment. It's your download day. It's the day heaven opens the vault and shows you the combination, but only if you're listening. So here's what I need you to do, and I need you to do it this Wednesday. Not next Wednesday. Not when life calms down. This Wednesday. Wake up 30 minutes earlier than usual. Turn off your phone. Sit in the quietest place in your house, and don't you dare start talking. Don't start with a grocery list of requests. Don't start with complaints about what's not working. Just listen. Listen for the name that keeps coming to mind. Listen for the scripture that won't leave you alone. Listen for the idea that seems too crazy to be from God, because often that's exactly how you know it is from God. Your breakthrough has been waiting in Wednesday's whisper. But the question that will determine your next 3 years isn't whether God is speaking. The question is, are you finally ready to get quiet enough to hear Him, now that Wednesday has whispered the blueprint into your spirit? Thursday comes with a different energy altogether. Thursday doesn't ask for your opinion. Thursday demands your obedience. And let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. Thursday is not about knowing. It's about moving. See, most of y'all are still sitting in Wednesday's revelation, turning it over in your mind like a Rubik's Cube, trying to figure out every angle before you make your first move. But God's not running a theology class here. He's commanding an army. And armies don't advance by understanding every battlefield, they advance by following orders. You've been praying for breakthrough, haven't you? You've been crying out for God to move in your life, to open doors, to shift your circumstances. But here's the truth that's going to cut you deep. God's been waiting for you to move first. Abraham didn't get a GPS when God called him out of Ur. He didn't get a detailed itinerary, a 5-year plan, or even a guarantee of where his next meal was coming from. Genesis 12:1 says, "The Lord had said to Abram, 'Go from your country, your people and your father's household, to the land I will show you.'" Notice what God didn't say. He didn't say, "Let me show you the land first, then decide if you want to go." He said, "Go to the land I will show you." Future tense, movement first, revelation second. Abram left his country with no map, just a voice. What makes you think your miracle won't cost your comfort? I know some of you are squirming right now because you want the whole staircase lit up before you take the first step. You want to see step 2, 3, 4, and 5 before you lift your foot off step 1. But that's not faith, that's control wearing a religious mask. God won't give you the whole staircase, just the first step. Will you move? Here's what Thursday is really testing. Will you trust God's character more than your comfort zone? Because your comfort zone is a liar. It's been telling you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into the unknown. It's been whispering that what you have now is better than what God wants to give you. Your comfort zone has become your prison, and you've been calling it home. But Thursday comes with a key, not to unlock your understanding, to unlock your obedience. Moses stood at the Red Sea with 2 million terrified Israelites behind him and Pharaoh's army charging toward them. Exodus 14:15 records God's response to Moses' prayer. "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward." Move forward, into the impossible, into the water that had never parted before, into the miracle that required their feet to get wet before their eyes could see the way. That restless feeling you've been carrying, that thing that won't let you sleep peacefully in your current situation, that's not anxiety, beloved. That's your spirit, recognizing that Thursday has arrived, and it's time to move. Some of you have been sitting in the same dead-end job for years, knowing God called you to something greater, but you're waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect safety net. Others have been holding on to relationships that died 2 seasons ago because letting go feels scarier than holding on to what's familiar. Thursday doesn't care about your timeline. Thursday doesn't care about your convenience. Thursday cares about your covenant with the God who called you out of your Egypt. And let me prophesy something over your life right now. The very thing you're afraid to let go of is the very thing that's preventing your blessing from reaching you. You've been praying for God to bless you while gripping onto the thing that's blocking your blessing. It's like trying to catch rain with a closed umbrella. The blessing is falling, but your hands are full of the wrong thing. David had a choice when he faced Goliath. He could have waited for better armor, more training, a larger support team. He could have analyzed the giant's weaknesses for months, developed a strategic plan, consulted with military experts. But David understood something that most believers miss: faith has an expiration date on hesitation. 1 Samuel 17:48 says, "As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him." David ran toward the giant. While everyone else was calculating the risk, David was crossing the valley. That thing God whispered to you on Wednesday, the dream he breathed back to life, the door he showed you, the person he told you to forgive, the leap he called you to take Thursday, is asking you one question: will you run toward it or away from it? Because here's what I need you to understand. With every fiber of your being, your Thursday obedience determines your Friday blessing. The two are not separate events. They're connected by the thread of your willingness to trust God when it costs you something. Esther didn't become queen by playing it safe. Ruth didn't find her destiny by staying in her comfort zone. Mary didn't birth the Messiah by avoiding the scandal of an unexpected pregnancy. These women understood that God's greatest blessings often come disguised as His most difficult assignments. Your Thursday assignment might look like forgiveness when you've been justified in your anger. It might look like launching that business when your bank account says wait. It might look like moving to that city when everyone you know is here. It might look like ending that relationship when loneliness feels scarier than settling. But Thursday doesn't negotiate. Thursday doesn't offer partial obedience as an option. Thursday says, all in or all out. And I can hear some of you thinking, but what if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? What if God doesn't come through? Let me answer your what-ifs with a what-if of my own. What if you succeed? What if this is the moment your entire life has been building toward? What if your obedience on Thursday becomes the testimony that changes someone else's life forever? Peter walked on water, but he had to get out of the boat first. The miracle didn't happen in the safety of the vessel, it happened in the risk of the step. If something's been tugging on your soul to forgive, to let go, to launch Thursday, is your yes or no? Not next week, not when you feel more ready, not when the conditions are perfect. Today, this Thursday, this moment. Comment below. What is the one thing God whispered Wednesday that you know you must do Thursday? Because Friday's blessing is already prepared, but it's locked behind Thursday's obedience. And some of you have been wondering why your prayers seem to bounce off the ceiling. It's because you've been asking God to bless your disobedience. The Israelites circled the same mountain for 40 years, not because God forgot about them, but because they wouldn't trust Him enough to move when He said move. Don't let your fear of the unknown trap you in a wilderness that was only meant to be a transition. Thursday is here. The command has been given. Your comfort is the price of admission to your destiny. The question that will determine everything is not whether you understand it all, it's whether you'll obey it all. Will you? You made it through Wednesday's whisper. You survived Thursday's test. But Friday? Friday is where heaven stops whispering and starts roaring. See, most of y'all think Friday is the weekend, time to clock out, kick back, let your guard down. But in the spirit realm, Friday is Coronation Day. It's when God takes His royal scepter and extends it toward those who've proven they can handle His favor. Friday is not the finish line, it's heaven's signature. And right now, as you're listening to my voice, God is preparing to sign something over your life that the enemy spent decades trying to forge your signature on. But God's about to overrule every counterfeit contract hell ever tried to trick you into. You remember Queen Esther. She didn't just walk into the king's presence on a whim. She prepared, she fasted, she positioned herself. And when she finally approached that throne, her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. One wrong move meant death. One right move meant deliverance for an entire nation. Esther didn't see the king on day 1, but on day 3, the scepter was extended. 3 days. Just like what you're walking through right now. But here's what most preachers won't tell you about that story. Esther wasn't just risking her life, she was risking her comfort. She had a palace, she had security, she had a title. But she also had a calling that was bigger than her comfort zone. And when the moment came to choose between safety and destiny, she chose destiny. What about you? What are you willing to risk for your Friday breakthrough? Because Friday doesn't come to the comfortable. Friday comes to the consecrated. You see, what you prepared for in the shadows on Wednesday, that quiet time when nobody was watching, when you chose to listen instead of scroll, when you chose to pray instead of panic, that wasn't just spiritual discipline, that was royal preparation. What you obeyed in fear on Thursday, that step you took when your knees were shaking, that call you made when your voice was trembling, that door you walked through, when every fiber of your being wanted to turn back, that wasn't just courage, that was character formation. Friday confirms. Friday is God saying, I saw what you did when you thought nobody was looking. I heard what you prayed when you thought nobody was listening. I felt your heart break when you chose my will over your way. And now I'm about to confirm your calling with my favor. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. God never signs what you won't submit. And Friday is for the sealed. You've been wondering why your breakthrough has been taking so long. You've been asking God, when? But God's been asking you, will you? Will you? Will you? Will you trust me when you can't trace me? Will you follow me when you can't see the path? Will you worship me when you can't feel my presence? See, Friday's favor isn't a reward for perfect people. It's a crown for surrendered souls. There are folks sitting in churches right now who've been waiting 40 years for their Friday. 40 years. You know why they're still waiting? Because they want God's signature without God's submission. They want the scepter without the sacrifice. They want the crown without the cross. But that's not how heaven operates. In the spirit realm, there's a protocol, there's an order, and that order says this. First comes the preparation, then comes the presentation, then comes the promotion. Wednesday was your preparation. Thursday was your presentation. Friday is your promotion. And I need you to understand something that's going to revolutionize how you see this moment. Your Friday isn't just about you getting blessed. Your Friday is about God getting glorified. When Moses held up that staff and the Red Sea split, that wasn't just about the Israelites getting to the other side. That was about Pharaoh's army, seeing that the God of Israel doesn't play games with his people. When David picked up that stone and Goliath fell, that wasn't just about one teenage boy winning a fight. That was about an entire army learning that the battle belongs to the Lord. When Jesus walked out of that tomb on resurrection morning, that wasn't just about one man defeating death. That was about every demon in hell learning that what God resurrects, hell cannot rebury. Your Friday breakthrough isn't just personal, it's prophetic. There are people watching your life who need to see that God still moves. There are family members who've given up on prayer, who need to witness that heaven still hears. There are friends who've stopped believing in miracles, who need to see that the impossible is still God's specialty. Your Friday is their proof that God is not dead, distant, or disinterested. But here's the thing about divine favor. It comes with divine responsibility. When God extends that scepter toward your life, He's not just saying, I bless you. He's saying, now bless others. The oil that anointed David's head as a shepherd boy was the same oil that flowed when he became king. The difference wasn't the oil, the difference was the assignment. God is about to anoint you for an assignment that's bigger than your imagination, broader than your background, and more blessed than your bank account could ever contain. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with yourself. Are you ready for favor that you didn't earn? Are you prepared for doors that you didn't knock on? Are you equipped for opportunities that you didn't apply for? Because Friday's favor doesn't trickle, it floods. And when God's favor floods your life, everything changes. Your conversations change, your confidence changes, your countenance changes, even your critics change, because when God signs something over your life, hell has to honor the signature. Right now, in the spirit realm, angels are preparing to roll back obstacles that have been blocking your path for years. Principalities are being served, eviction notices from territories they've illegally occupied in your life. And the King of Kings is reaching for his royal scepter. The question isn't whether God's favor is coming. The question is, are you positioned to receive it? Because Friday is almost here. And when it arrives, it's going to separate the spectators from the participants, the wishers from the warriors, the hopeful from the holy. Which one are you going to be? Listen, I need to tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. This ain't fear-mongering, it's prophecy. And prophecy doesn't come with sugarcoating or comfortable cushions. It comes with truth that cuts through every excuse you've been telling yourself. You see, there are moments in Scripture when God shows up with a divine appointment, and people, good people, faithful people, praying people, they miss it. Not because they weren't spiritual enough, not because they didn't love God, but because they confused God's timing with their convenience. Jesus wept over Jerusalem. You hear me? The Son of God who knew every sparrow that fell, who counted every hair on every head. He wept, not gentle tears. He sobbed, he mourned, because an entire city missed their day of visitation. Luke 19:44 says they didn't recognize the time of God's coming to them. What breaks my heart is this. They were waiting for God to show up. They prayed for the Messiah, They fasted for deliverance. They sang about salvation. But when God showed up in their timeline, they said, "Not now, not like this. Come back when it's more convenient." And Jesus wept because he knew what that missed moment would cost them. 40 years later, Jerusalem was destroyed, their children scattered, their temple reduced to rubble, all because they confused God's kairos with their calendar. Now, I'm looking at you through this camera, and I'm seeing the same thing. You've been praying for breakthrough. You've been crying out for change. You've been asking God to move in your finances, your health, your family, your purpose. And He's been preparing to answer you. But are you ready to receive it on His terms, or are you waiting for it to fit your schedule? Don't you dare say, "Next week, Lord." Don't you dare say, "When I'm more prepared." Don't you dare say, "After I get my house in order." Destiny doesn't wait for convenience. Divine appointments don't reschedule. I've watched too many of God's people miss their moment because they were busy being busy. They were so focused on getting ready to be ready that they missed the very thing they were preparing for. It's like standing at the train station, ticket in hand, watching your train pull away because you were still checking your luggage. Moses stood at the burning bush for 80 years of preparation. But when God said go, it was go now, not next season. Not when Pharaoh seemed more reasonable. Not when Moses felt more eloquent. Now. Esther had her moment. For such a time as this. Not for such a time as when it's comfortable. Not for such a time as when she had more experience. For such a time as this. The time when everything was on the line. The time when delay meant death. And here's what's keeping me up at night, chosen one. Here's what's burning in my spirit like fire shut up in my bones. I see you sitting there, and I know you're in your such a time as this moment, but you're treating it like a suggestion instead of a summons. 3 days are a divine window. Not 3 weeks. Not 3 months. 3 days. And if you shut your eyes now, if you roll over and hit the spiritual snooze button, you're going to wake up in the same cycle 3 years from now. Same struggles, same limitations, same prayers, same tears. But here's the part that'll haunt you. It won't be because God didn't show up. It'll be because when He did, you weren't awake. I want you to think about something right now. What if the reason your prayers have felt like they're bouncing off the ceiling isn't because God isn't listening? What if it's because He's been waiting for you to step into the window He's already opened? What if every delay you've experienced, every setback, every not yet has been God clearing the path for this exact moment? What if every tear you've cried has been watering the ground for what He's about to birth through you? But here's the catch, and this is where it gets real. Where the rubber meets the road, you can't receive tomorrow's blessing with yesterday's obedience. You can't walk through this week's open door with last month's faith. This window requires fresh surrender, present tense obedience, right now, faith. The children of Israel had this same moment. 12 spies went into the promised land. 10 came back with a report that sounded reasonable, practical, logical. The cities are fortified. The people are strong. Let's wait until we're better equipped. But 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, they saw the same giants, the same walls, the same challenges. But they said, "We can take it now." You know what happened? The 10 reasonable spies convinced an entire generation that God's timing wasn't right, that they needed more preparation, more resources, more favorable conditions. And that entire generation, except for Joshua and Caleb, died in the wilderness. Not because God stopped loving them, not because He changed His mind about their destiny, but because they confused God's now with their not yet. 40 years. 40 years they wandered in circles, 11 days from their promise. And their children had to finish what they were too afraid to start. Is that your story? Are you going to let fear dress up as wisdom and convince you that God's timing is off? Are you going to let doubt masquerade as prudence and talk you out of the very thing you've been begging heaven for? Because I'm telling you right now, this window, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's not opening again next month. Divine appointments don't have make-up dates. Prophetic moments don't wait for your comfort zone to expand. The prophet Isaiah said, "In an acceptable time I have heard you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances line up perfectly. Now. And here's what'll break your heart if you miss this. 3 years from now, when you're still struggling with the same issues, still praying the same prayers, still waiting for the same breakthrough, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember this message. You'll remember the stirring in your spirit right now. And you'll realize that the very thing you were waiting for was waiting for you to step into it. The question that's burning in my spirit right now isn't whether God is ready to move in your life. He is. The question is, are you ready to move with Him? Are you ready to step out of the boat when the waters are still rough? Are you ready to march around Jericho when the walls still look impossible? Are you ready to say yes to God's invitation even when you can't see the full staircase? Because if you're not, if you're going to wait for perfect conditions, perfect timing, perfect feelings, then you need to prepare yourself for perfect disappointment. But if there's something in your spirit right now that's saying, this is my time, this is my moment, this is what I've been waiting for, then you're standing at the edge of the greatest breakthrough of your life. The choice is yours. But the window is closing. And when it does, when Friday passes and you realize you let the moment slip through your fingers, don't say, nobody warned you. What's it gonna be, chosen one? Are you gonna step into your destiny, or are you gonna watch it from the sidelines? You know what's got me shook? Y'all are treating this like it's some regular Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday situation. Like God penciled you in between your doctor's appointment and grocery shopping. But let me tell you something that's gonna blow your mind wide open. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they are kairos, not chronological. See, there's 2 kinds of time in this universe. There's chronos, that's your wristwatch time, your calendar time, the time that ticks away whether you're sleeping or praying or crying in your kitchen at midnight. But then there's kairos, that's God's time, sacred time, the time when heaven breaks into your ordinary Tuesday and says, everything changes now. And right now, you're not living in chronos anymore. You've stepped into kairos, and most of you don't even realize it. Let me paint you a picture that'll make your spirit tremble. Remember Moses at the Red Sea? The Israelites are trapped Pharaoh's army breathing down their necks, death staring them in the face. But Moses lifts that staff, and you know what happened? Time bowed down. The laws of physics said, yes, sir. The ocean said, how high? Because when God decides to move in kairos time, the impossible becomes inevitable. King Hezekiah was dying. Isaiah told him to get his house in order because his number was up. But Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and wept before the Lord. And God listened to this. God made the shadow go backwards 10 degrees on the sundial. Time paused. Time literally reversed because a man cried out in kairos. Paul on the road to Damascus. One moment he's Saul the persecutor, next moment he's face down in the dirt, blind as a bat, asking, Lord, what do you want me to do? 3 days of darkness, then scales fall from his eyes. Time bent. His entire timeline got rewritten in a kairos moment, and it's bending now for you. But here's what's breaking my heart. Some of you are still checking your iPhone calendar, still asking your friends what they think, still waiting for a more convenient season. You're treating a kairos window like it's a suggestion box, like God's offering you a maybe instead of commanding you to move. When God schedules something in kairos time, it's not optional, it's sacred. It's not a request, it's a divine appointment with your destiny. You want to know why you've been restless these past few weeks? Why sleep feels different? Why familiar places feel strange? Because your spirit knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. You're not living in regular time anymore. The atmosphere around your life has shifted into kairos, and if you miss this window, you won't just be late, you'll be locked out. I'm talking to somebody right now who's been waiting 30 years for their breakthrough. 30 years of prayer, 30 years of believing, 30 years of watching other people get their miracle while you're still standing in the same spot. But what if I told you that those 30 years weren't wasted time, they were preparation time? What if every closed door, every delayed answer, every night you cried yourself to sleep was God preparing you for these 3 days? See, in Chronos time, 30 years feels like forever. In Kairos time, 30 years is just the setup for a 3-day miracle. But here's the part that's going to mess you up. In Kairos time, delay isn't always denial. Sometimes it's divine timing. But disobedience? Disobedience in a Kairos moment? That's not delay. That's destruction. Remember, Esther? For such a time as this, not such a year as this, not such a season as this, such a time as this. A Kairos moment when one woman's courage saved an entire nation. But what if she had said, "Let me think about it, King. Can I get back to you next week?" The whole nation would have been wiped out because she missed her Kairos. I need you to understand something that most preachers won't tell you. God doesn't send Kairos moments for your convenience. He sends them for your destiny. And destiny doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It waits for you to say yes. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, time is doing something supernatural around your life. Can you feel it? That quickening in your spirit? That sense that something's about to crack wide open? That's not excitement, that's recognition. Your spirit recognizes Kairos when it shows up. But let me warn you about something. The enemy knows about Kairos too. And right now, he's working overtime to distract you, to make you doubt, to convince you this is just another motivational message. He'll send every interruption, every emergency, every reason why you should wait until next month. Because he knows if you step into this Kairos window, his assignment over your life is finished. You've been praying for God to move in your situation. But what if God's been waiting for you to move in his timing? What if your miracle isn't about God doing something different, but about you finally aligning with what he's already orchestrated? 3 days, not 3 weeks, not 3 months. 3 days of Kairos time that can rewrite the next 30 years of your Chronos life. Wednesday, the whisper. Thursday, the war. Friday, the victory. But you've got to discern the difference between an invitation and a command. This isn't God asking if you'd like to be blessed. This is God commanding you to step into the blessing he's already prepared. Drop the word Kairos in the comments if you feel time shifting under your feet. If you sense something eternal breaking into your temporary situation. Because what I'm about to reveal next will either confirm what your spirit already knows or expose why you've been stuck in the same cycle for years. The clock on your wall keeps ticking, but the clock in heaven just stopped, and it's waiting for your response. Let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. While you've been sitting there for the last 20 minutes, wrestling with whether this message is real, whether these 3 days actually matter, whether you should take action or just keep waiting for another sign, hell has been in a strategy meeting about your life. That's right. While you're debating, hell is planning. You think the enemy is sleeping. You think he's taking a coffee break while you figure out your next move. Listen to me carefully. The moment heaven marked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for your breakthrough, the kingdom of darkness called an emergency session. They know what's at stake. They know your timeline is about to shift, and they are working overtime to make sure you miss it. The Bible says in 1 Peter 5-8, "Be alert and of sober mind." Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. But here's what most people miss. He's not looking for the weak ones. He's hunting the chosen ones. He's targeting those who are on the verge of their greatest breakthrough. You want to know why you've been feeling so much resistance lately? Why everything seems harder? Why doubt keeps whispering in your ear? Because the enemy knows something you're still figuring out. He knows that these 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're not just dates on a calendar. They're your escape route from everything that's been holding you back. And he will do anything to keep you from walking through that door. You see, the enemy doesn't fear your gifts. Let me say that again so it sinks deep into your spirit. The enemy doesn't fear your gifts. He's not losing sleep over your talents, your abilities, your potential. You know what terrifies him? Your timing. Your obedience in the exact moment. Heaven says, now. Think about it. David wasn't the strongest warrior in Israel, but when he faced Goliath, he moved at the right moment. Moses wasn't the most eloquent speaker, but when God said, go to Pharaoh, he went at the right time. Esther wasn't the most qualified queen, but when Mordecai said, For such a time as this, she acted in her moment. The enemy knows that gifts without timing are just potential, but gifts released in God's perfect timing, that's when kingdoms fall, that's when chains break, that's when everything changes. And right now, he's watching you. He's watching to see if you'll hesitate just long enough to miss your moment. He's whispering, wait a little longer, get more confirmation. Make sure it's really God. He's feeding you the same lie he's been using since the Garden of Eden: doubt God's word, question God's timing, delay God's plan. But I'm here to tell you something that's going to cut through every lie the enemy has whispered in your ear. You don't need more signs. You don't need another confirmation. You don't need to wait for a burning bush or a voice from heaven. You need to act on the one heaven already gave you. How many signs do you need? How many times does God have to speak before you move? The restlessness in your spirit, that's a sign. The fact that you're watching this video right now, that's a sign. The tears that came out of nowhere when I mentioned Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's a sign. You keep saying, God, send confirmation. But what if this is the confirmation? What if this message, this moment, this stirring in your soul, what if this is God's final call before the door closes? What if the next door won't open unless you walk through this one? Listen to me, chosen one. Every delay is not divine. Every hesitation is not wisdom. Sometimes delay is disobedience dressed up as caution. Sometimes waiting is just fear wearing a religious mask. Remember the 10 spies who went to scout the promised land? They came back with a report full of fear. The giants are too big. The walls are too high. We can't do this. But Caleb and Joshua saw the same giants, the same walls, and said, we can take them. God already gave us the victory. The difference wasn't in their eyes. It was in their timing. It was in their willingness to move when God said move, regardless of what they could see with their natural vision. Right now, you're standing at the edge of your promised land. You can see the giants. You can see the walls. You can feel the fear trying to paralyze you. But I need you to hear what Caleb and Joshua heard in their spirits. God already gave you the victory. He already marked the days. He already opened the door. The question is not whether you're qualified. The question is whether you're willing. The question is not whether you can see the whole staircase. The question is whether you'll take the first step. The question is not whether you understand the plan. The question is whether you trust the one who made it. Every day you wait, the enemy gets stronger. Every day you hesitate, his grip gets tighter. Every day you delay, his lies get louder. But every day you choose obedience over fear, faith over doubt, action over analysis, that's a day the kingdom of darkness trembles. Hell is not afraid of your prayers. They've heard your prayers for years. Hell is not afraid of your worship. They've watched you worship in the good times and the bad. But hell is terrified of your obedience in the moment of divine timing, because they know that when you move in sync with heaven's schedule, nothing can stop what God has already set in motion. The enemy has been studying your patterns. He knows you tend to overthink. He knows you like to analyze everything to death before you move. He knows you're afraid of making the wrong decision. So he feeds you analysis paralysis. He gives you so many options, so many possibilities, so many what-ifs that you freeze. But God's voice cuts through all the noise. It's simple. It's clear. It's now. Wednesday listen, Thursday obey, Friday receive. That's it. That's the plan. Stop complicating what God made simple. You see, there's a spiritual principle that most people never learn. Delayed obedience is disobedience. When God says go, and you say, wait, you're not being cautious, you're being rebellious. When God says now, and you say soon, you're not being wise, you're being willful. Jonah thought he could delay God's command. How did that work out for him? 3 days in the belly of a whale before he finally said yes. Don't let your 3 days of breakthrough become 3 days of discipline because you chose delay over obedience. The enemy is counting on your hesitation. He's banking on your fear. He's investing in your indecision. But heaven is calling for your courage. Heaven is demanding your faith. Heaven is requiring your immediate yes. So here's my question for you, and I need you to answer it in your spirit right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Are you going to let hell's strategy session determine your destiny? Or are you going to let heaven's perfect timing transform your timeline? Because, chosen one, the spiritual realm is holding its breath, waiting for your answer. And whatever you decide in the next few seconds will determine whether you walk into the greatest breakthrough of your life or spend another year wondering what could have been. The whisper from heaven is getting softer. The roar from hell is getting louder. But there's still time to choose. There's still time to say yes. There's still time to step into your Wednesday, Thursday, Friday miracle. But that time is running out faster than you think. And what you do with this revelation will either become your greatest testimony or your deepest regret. Listen to me, chosen one. I need you to lift your eyes above your own circumstances for just a moment, because what I'm about to tell you will shift everything you think you know about this divine window we're walking through. This Wednesday, Thursday, Friday sequence, it's not just about your breakthrough. It's not just about your healing. It's not even just about your miracle. This is about bloodlines. This is about generations that haven't even been born yet. This is about children who will walk in freedom because you chose courage when it cost you everything. Your grandkids will be blessed by the decision you make this week. I want you to think about that for a second. Really think about it. Right now, somewhere in the realm of the not yet, there are little hands that will never know poverty because you said yes to God's voice on Wednesday. There are dreams that will flourish because you chose obedience over comfort on Thursday. There are destinies that will unfold in glory because you walked through heaven's door on Friday. You think you're just trying to pay your bills, but God sees your great-granddaughter starting her own business debt-free. You think you're just trying to heal from heartbreak, but heaven sees your grandson walking into marriage without the wounds that have plagued your family for decades. You think you're just trying to find your purpose, but the Almighty sees your bloodline stepping into ministry, into leadership, into influence that will touch nations. This ain't just about you getting your stuff together. This is about you becoming the ancestor that future generations will thank God for. Remember Abraham? God didn't just call him out of Ur for Abraham's sake. Genesis 12:3 says, "In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Abraham's yes didn't just change his zip code, it changed the trajectory of humanity. His obedience in one moment created a blessing pipeline that we're still drinking from thousands of years later. You are standing at your Abraham moment. This is a spiritual fork in the road, and your yes affects more than just your house. It affects houses that haven't been built yet. It affects marriages that haven't happened yet. It affects businesses that haven't been conceived yet. But here's what's breaking my heart. Some of you are still thinking small. You're still trapped in survival mode, worried about what people will think, scared of what it might cost you. But you're not seeing what your hesitation is costing them, the generations coming behind you. Every curse that breaks in your life breaks for your children's children. Every chain that snaps off your wrists will never touch their ankles. Every door that opens for you creates a pathway they'll walk through with ease. But if you don't walk through this window, if you let fear make the decision, those same chains wrap around their wrists before they're even born. Let me paint you a picture that might shock you. Right now, there's a spirit of poverty hovering over your family line. It's been there for generations. Your grandmother struggled with it. Your parents fought it. You've been wrestling with it your whole life. But this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday window, it's your moment to end it, forever. You break curses when you say yes during divine windows. Deuteronomy 30:19 says, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live." Your descendants, not just you. Them, the ones who will carry your DNA, your name, your legacy. They're counting on the choice you make right now. But I need to tell you something that might sting. If you keep playing it safe, if you keep choosing comfort over calling, you're not just limiting yourself, you're limiting them. That spirit of fear that's been whispering in your ear, it's not just trying to stop your breakthrough, it's trying to sabotage your entire family tree. I've seen it happen. I've watched people miss their Kairos moment, and 3 generations later, their grandchildren are still fighting the same battles they were too afraid to face. The same generational struggles. the same financial limitations, the same relationship patterns, the same spiritual emptiness. But I've also seen the other side. I've watched people step through their divine window with trembling hands and bold hearts, and watched their children walk into opportunities that seemed impossible. I've seen generational curses shatter like glass, and generational blessings flow like rivers. Think about this. Joshua's generation wandered in the wilderness for 40 years because their parents were too afraid to take the promised land. 40 years of delay because one generation chose fear over faith. But when Joshua finally said yes to God's command, it wasn't just about him crossing the Jordan River. It was about his children, and their children, and their children's children finally inheriting what God had promised. You might be the Joshua of your family line, the one who finally says, "Enough is enough. This generational pattern stops with me." Your yes to God this week will echo through eternity. Your children will have opportunities that you never had. Your grandchildren will walk in wisdom that you had to fight for. Your great-grandchildren will inherit wealth, not just financial, but spiritual, emotional, relational wealth that you built with your obedience. But here's the part that should make you tremble. Your no will echo just as loudly. Your hesitation will create limitations they'll have to overcome. Your fear will become their obstacle. Your delay will become their detour. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm trying to awaken you to the weight of this moment. This isn't just about whether you get your miracle. This is about whether they get theirs. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Most people think that's talking about money. But the Hebrew word for inheritance, nachalah, it means so much more. It means a possession that's passed down, a legacy, a spiritual endowment, character, faith, breakthrough patterns, victory blueprints. What kind of inheritance are you preparing? What kind of legacy are you building? Are you going to be remembered as the one who played it safe, or the one who changed everything? I can see it now. Decades from now, they'll gather around the table for Thanksgiving, and someone will say, "You know, if great-great-grandma hadn't said yes to God that week back in 2025, none of us would be here living like this." They'll tell stories about your courage. They'll celebrate the day you chose to trust God instead of your circumstances. Or they'll sit around that same table, still struggling with the same issues, still fighting the same battles, and someone will whisper, "I wonder what would have happened if she had just trusted God when she had the chance." Which story do you want them to tell? The window is still open. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're not just days on a calendar, they're generational turning points. They're the moments when family trees either flourish or wither. They're the crossroads where legacies are either built or broken. Your great-grandmother's prayers are hanging in the balance. Your unborn granddaughter's destiny is waiting on your decision. The blessings that have been backed up in the spiritual realm for generations are ready to flow, but they need a vessel. They need someone who's willing to say yes when it's scary, to move when it's unclear, to trust when it's uncomfortable. That someone is you. It's always been you. This is why you've been through what you've been through. This is why you've survived what should have destroyed you. This is why you're still here, still standing, still believing. You weren't preserved for your own sake alone. You were preserved to be the breakthrough that blesses generations. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you ready to stop living for yourself and start living for them? Now listen to me real good, because what I'm about to tell you might sting a little. But sometimes the truth has to cut deep before it can heal deep. You know what happened to the Israelites after God literally split the Red Sea in half? After they walked through on dry ground while their enemies drowned behind them? After witnessing the most impossible miracle in human history? 3 days later, just 72 hours, they were complaining about the water tasting bitter. A week after that, they were begging Moses to take them back to Egypt, back to slavery, back to making bricks without straw. Sound familiar? Some of y'all prayed and fasted for breakthrough, cried out to heaven until your voice went hoarse. And when God finally moved that mountain, when he finally opened that door, when he finally sent that provision, 72 hours later, you were complaining because it didn't come wrapped in your Amazon Prime package with next-day delivery. You got spiritual amnesia faster than a New York minute. And here's what breaks my heart about this. Your heart is still sore from the last delay. I can feel it through this screen. You've been disappointed before. You've had prayers that felt like they bounced off the ceiling. You've had promises that seemed to evaporate like morning mist in Central Park. But hear me loud and clear, don't forget what Friday felt like. Don't forget the electricity that ran through your spirit when heaven confirmed your calling. Don't forget that peace that washed over you like warm honey when God whispered your name in the dark. Because spiritual amnesia is the enemy's favorite weapon. He can't stop God from blessing you, but he sure can make you forget it happened. Look at the Israelites again. 40 years in the wilderness because they couldn't remember what God had already done. 40 years circling the same mountain because they let doubt erase divine intervention. 40 years dying in the desert because they chose the familiar pain of complaining over the unfamiliar territory of trusting. You don't have 40 years to waste. Your grandchildren don't have 40 years to wait for you to remember who you are. This is why Wednesday, Thursday, Friday isn't just about receiving, it's about remembering. It's about tattooing God's faithfulness so deep into your soul that spiritual amnesia can't touch it. I'm talking to someone right now who's been walking in circles for months. You had a breakthrough last year, maybe even last month, but because it didn't look exactly like you pictured it, you started doubting, you started questioning, you started that familiar dance of, did God really say? Stop it. Just stop it right there. When the devil whispers, did God really promise you that promotion? You tell him, I remember the fire. When he hisses, are you sure that healing was real? You declare, I remember the whisper. When he plants seeds of doubt about your calling, your purpose, your destiny, you stand firm and proclaim, I remember the seal. Don't forget the fire that burned in your belly when God first called you. Don't forget the whisper that cut through all the noise and spoke directly to your spirit. Don't forget the seal, that divine confirmation that marked you as chosen, set apart, anointed for such a time as this. The enemy is banking on your forgetfulness. He's counting on you getting comfortable in the in-between, settling for the status quo, letting the dust gather on your dreams. But what if I told you that your breakthrough isn't late, it's right on time? What if that delay you've been cursing is actually divine protection, keeping you from stepping into something before you were spiritually mature enough to handle it? Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God used him to deliver a nation. Joseph spent years in prison before he became second in command of Egypt. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't wear the crown until he was 30. Your timing isn't God's timing, and his timing is always perfect. So when you wake up tomorrow morning and that familiar doubt tries to creep in, when that old voice starts whispering nothing's changed, when your circumstances look the same as they did last week, remember the fire, remember the whisper, remember the seal, remember that God's promises don't have expiration dates, remember that his word never returns void, remember that what he started in you, he will complete. Don't let spiritual amnesia rob you of your divine appointment. Don't let forgetfulness steal your future. Don't let doubt disqualify you from your destiny. Because here's what's really happening. God is testing your memory before he releases your miracle. He's checking to see if you'll remember his faithfulness when the feelings fade. He's watching to see if you'll hold on to his promises when the pressure mounts. This is your Joshua moment. This is where you choose to cross over or circle back. This is where you decide if you're going to trust what God already showed you, or let spiritual amnesia drag you back to Egypt. The children of Israel died in the wilderness because they couldn't remember their way to the promised land. But you're different. You're chosen. You're marked for breakthrough, not breakdown. So tell me, what did God show you on Friday that you're tempted to forget today? What promise is trying to slip through your fingers? What calling is fighting for space in your memory? Don't you dare let it go. Don't you dare let spiritual amnesia win. Because while you've been questioning what God already confirmed, while you've been doubting what heaven already declared, time has been ticking. And the window that opened for your breakthrough won't stay open forever. The question isn't whether God will be faithful. The question is whether you'll remember that he already has been. You know what breaks my heart? It's not the people who never got a chance. It's the ones who had the chance and let it slip through their fingers like sand. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are people who had this exact same moment 40 years ago. They felt the stirring. They heard the whisper. They knew something divine was breaking through, but they hesitated. They rationalized. They said, "Maybe next time, Lord." And you know where they are today, still waiting, still circling, still hoping for another window that may never come. The Israelites missed one divine window and spent 40 years circling a promise they were supposed to possess in days, not weeks, not months, days. God had already prepared their victory. The land was already theirs. The giants were already defeated in the spirit realm. All they had to do was walk in. But fear whispered louder than faith, doubt screamed louder than destiny, and an 11-day journey became a 40-year funeral march. Listen to me, chosen one. You don't have 40 years to waste, and neither do your children. That ache in your chest, that restlessness in your spirit, that's not God punishing you. That's Him preparing you. He's been positioning you for this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday sequence for years. But here's what terrifies me. Here's what keeps me up at night praying for people like you. There's a window right now, a sacred, ancient, once-in-a-generation window. And if you let it shut, it won't just be a delay, it'll become a detour, a 40-year detour. You think I'm being dramatic? Ask the woman who ignored her divine window in 1983 and spent the next 4 decades wondering what if. Ask the man who felt God's call to step out in faith, but chose the safety of his comfort zone instead. Ask the couple who knew they were supposed to forgive, to reconcile, to rebuild, but waited for a more convenient season that never came. They're not living, they're existing, they're not thriving, they're surviving. And the saddest part? They know it. Deep down in their bones, they know they missed their moment. Your moment is now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel more ready, more worthy, more equipped. Now, the enemy of your soul has been studying you for decades. He knows your patterns. He knows you'll procrastinate when things get uncomfortable. He knows you'll delay when the stakes get high. He's counting on you to treat this like every other spiritual moment. Nice, inspiring, but ultimately theoretical. But this isn't theoretical. This is your timeline hanging in the balance. See, most people think they're fighting for a breakthrough. They're not. You're not just fighting for a breakthrough, you're fighting for your timeline. You're fighting for the next chapter of your story. You're fighting for your children's inheritance and your grandchildren's destiny. Because when you miss a divine window, it doesn't just affect you, it affects generations. The blessing that was supposed to flow through your family line gets diverted. The breakthrough that was supposed to shift your entire bloodline gets delayed. The favor that was supposed to open doors for your descendants gets locked away. You think you have time to figure this out. You think you can pray about it, sleep on it, discuss it with people who weren't even in the room when God spoke to you. But divine windows don't operate on human schedules. They operate on heaven's calendar, and heaven's calendar waits for no one. Listen to me one more time, chosen one. As we close this sacred moment together, I need you to remember 3 things that will carry you through whatever comes next. First, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. These weren't just dates on a calendar. They were divine appointments that have already shifted your spiritual trajectory. The whisper you heard, the step you took, the favor that found you, these weren't coincidences. They were confirmations that God is still writing your story, and the best chapters are yet to come. Second, your obedience didn't just bless you, it shattered generational chains and opened portals for people you'll never meet this side of heaven. Every time you want to minimize what happened, remember that angels are still moving because you said yes when it hurt. Third, this window of breakthrough isn't closing, it's expanding. What started in 3 days is going to unfold over the next 3 months, 3 years, maybe even 3 decades. You're not waiting for another miracle. You're walking in the aftermath of the one that already happened. But I want you to know something else. You're not walking this road alone. God hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. He's the same God who parted seas, moved mountains, and raised the dead. The same power that created the universe is working in your situation right now. While you sleep tonight, He's arranging circumstances. While you worry tomorrow, He's opening doors. While you doubt next week, He's already preparing your testimony. I want you to do something for me right now. Look through these comments. Pray for someone whose struggle touches your heart. Leave an encouraging word for someone who needs hope. Share your testimony if God moved in your life during these 3 days, because your story might be the lifeline someone else needs to hold on to. But before you go, I have one question that I need you to sit with. What would your life look like if you truly believed that God's best days for you are ahead, not behind? Let that question settle in your spirit. Let it challenge every lie the enemy has whispered about your age, your mistakes, your missed opportunities. Let it remind you that with God, it's never too late for a miracle, never too broken for restoration, never too lost for redemption. Now, before we close, let me pray over you not as a stranger speaking through a screen, but as someone who believes in the calling on your life, who sees the gold in you even when you can't see it yourself. Father God, I lift up every person who stayed with us through this entire message. They didn't stumble upon this video by accident. You led them here because you have something to say to their hearts. Lord, I pray that the words spoken here tonight don't just inspire them for a moment, but transform them for a lifetime. God, I pray over their Wednesday whispers that they would never doubt the divine downloads you've given them. I pray over their Thursday steps that they would walk in confidence even when the path isn't clear. And I pray over their Friday favor that they would recognize your hand at work in ways they never expected. Father, for those who are tired, give them supernatural strength. For those who are afraid, replace their fear with unwavering faith. For those who are struggling financially, open floodgates of provision. For those who are sick in their bodies, send healing power that flows from the throne room to their very cells. For those who are lonely, surround them with relationships that reflect your love. Lord, I speak over the dreams that have been deferred, the promises that seem delayed, the prayers that feel unanswered. I declare that this is the season of suddenly. This is the time of divine acceleration. What they've been waiting years for, you're going to do in weeks. What seemed impossible yesterday is becoming inevitable today. And God, I pray protection over their minds. When the enemy tries to steal the revelation they receive tonight, remind them of this moment. When doubt creeps in, let your peace wash over them. When fear knocks on their door, let faith answer. I thank you that they are not just survivors, they are overcomers. They are not just getting by, they are breaking through. They are not just chosen, they are prepared, anointed, and equipped for such a time as this. Bless them coming in and going out. Bless their families, their finances, their futures. Let your favor follow them wherever they go, and let their lives become such powerful testimonies of your goodness that others can't help but ask, what happened to you? In the mighty name of Jesus I pray. Amen. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your hearts, for typing your cities, for believing that God still speaks to His people. If this message has touched your life, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We're building something powerful here, a community of believers who refuse to settle for less than God's best. Your 3 days have only just begun. The best is yet to come. Until next time, walk in faith, chosen one. Walk in faith.